Good morning. We're back here on KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin, 7:08 a.m. And in the studio, as promised, is Chief Greg Stevens with the Lubbock Police Department. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Well, glad to have you. Gosh, we've got a whole list of things we want to talk about. And of course, one of the things that we specifically, when we asked to get you on the show, that Matt and I have been noticing, is all the shootings that are occurring in Lubbock, and we just wanted to know your thoughts and what's up with all that.
So, indeed, we've had a lot of shootings, and we talked about this yesterday in a press conference. We've had 5 homicides so far this year, which very concerning for us. That's a lot, and not just in the month of January, but they've actually occurred just in the last couple of weeks. But also in the month of January, there's been 3 other shootings that fortunately didn't result in homicides. And so it's something we're really looking at. We typically don't see that many in such a short amount of time, certainly not in the first month of the year. January is typically a pretty slow month for us.
Okay, so what's up with this? What is bringing this on?
Well, there's no way to really know for sure. There's a lot of factors that can come into play.
One would suspect drugs are a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at a lot of different factors. One of the things that we're seeing in several of these is that they're drug related, and it's one of the things we really want to put out. And again, I want to be very careful not to give people a false sense of security and say, hey, don't worry, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. It's very concerning to people. However, these are not random acts of violence, and one of the things that we're always asked is, hey, so is it dangerous for me to go to the supermarket? Is it dangerous for me to go, to work, or for my kids to go to school? And none of these have any direct correlation to people's everyday lives and what they do. All of these, they either relate back to a drug crime, other criminal activity, ongoing disputes between people that know each other, or domestic violence. So they really don't speak to what an individual's sense of safety and security are. And so what we see that I think is really causing some of these are certainly the involvement of drugs, and then again, in one of the particular cases, it was an ongoing dispute that's been happening for several months. So that homicide, it could have occurred, last month or the month before or next month. It just happened to have culminated in this shooting death this month.
Well, Sheriff Rowe, we had the sheriff on back some time ago, and I think he indicated that most of this that he felt had to do with, or that was drug related. And again, he says, if you're not running in that world, you probably are not going to, wind up getting shot.
Well, that's exactly right. And he and I work very closely just across the whole spectrum of law enforcement. We've started a couple of combined units. He's been the real driving force behind a combined narcotics unit and an anti-gang unit that we're starting. And so I think that's going to have a big impact on it. But he's exactly right that if you're leading an everyday life, going to work, going to school, being a good contributing member of society, your chances of being a victim of a random act of violence is extraordinarily low. And he's exactly right. And that certainly, if you're not in the drug trade, your chances of being shot is and it's certainly very diminished.
So, is there anything that we could? It seems to me like we need to, as law enforcement in Lubbock and in this part of the country, with all the drugs it seems that we're now experiencing the increase, that we should start a war on these drugs. Is there a way to do that?
Well, and let me be clear too. It's not just Lubbock; it's really across the country. I think we've seen an uptick in it, and so I don't want to characterize us as having a bigger problem than most any other places. But we've certainly got a big problem that he and I are both aware of, and we're trying to address. And again, we've started some new initiatives that I think are going to have a big impact. And again, they're still in a very initial phases. I think a lot more information sharing that we can accomplish through this joint unit, as well as a couple of other units that we're trying to stand up that will deal with violent crimes as well as property crimes. Because I think people know this, but it goes, it's worth mentioning as often as possible. When it comes to property crimes, the vast majority of those are fueled by drug habits or the underlying drug crimes. No one breaks into your house and steals your property because they typically want it for themselves. They're doing that in order to fuel a drug habit, in order to sell off for drugs or to trade for drugs, and I think that's a pretty widely known thing. But we need to always be aware and conscious of that. So rather than just attacking the property crimes, which we do, and we have a very robust strategy for that, we want to attack that underlying issue. What's fueling that to begin with are these drug crimes as well as other vice type crimes.
So last year, y'all had talked about being at, I guess y'all had finally hired up to what y'all wanted to hire, which was, I think, one person for every 500 people in Lubbock?
Well, sort of. There's a couple of numbers out there, and it gets a little confusing whenever we talk about what our strength is and what it should be. So our goal was to hire up to our authorized strength or our budgeted strength, which at the time was 433 officers, and we were a ways short of that. And then there is the ideal strength, which is this 2 per 1,000 ratio that we've, as a city, have been striving to get to for some time, and we're nowhere near that. That would be closer to 500 officers. But again, you can hope for this very large number, but if you're not at your budgeted strength, how many people you have the money set aside for, well, you don't even need to worry about that much larger number. We were short of the 433, so we set our goals on, hey, let's just get to the budgeted strength. And so we set our goals on that, on recruiting, retention, and then we would look towards expansion. And so we reached those goals. And in this current budget year, once we'd hired the 433, I sat down with the city manager and then we put into the budget to approach the council with how many more we could add to the budget. I think everyone was surprised that we'd reached the allotted 433 strength because we hadn't in a decade or more, close to 15 years probably. And so, understanding how expensive it is to add even one sworn officer, we recognize, hey, we can't add 30 more right away, and we can't add 20 more. So we added 10 to this operating budget for this current fiscal year. So effective October 1st of 2017, we made the authorized strength 443. And I'm happy to say that with the academy class that starts here at the next month on February 26th, we're in a hiring process right now, we will reach that goal again. In fact, we're going to overhire by a couple of officers to account for some expected retirements. So we're going to be at 443 officers, again, at our authorized strength. Now, we need more police officers, but again, they're expensive, and so as we go into the next budget year, I'll have that conversation with the city manager, and we'll look and see how many we can afford to hire as we look forward into the future with that expansion piece.
Okay. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk more. Where our guest this morning is Chief Greg Stevens with Lubbock Police Department. We shall return. News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM. We are KFYO Mornings. Dave King, Matt Martin, right here on your radio. 70 degrees, forecast high today, 40 as you're getting up. We're talking with Lubbock Police Chief Greg Stevens. And I wanted to talk to you about those Mustangs that I see the police driving around. Matt and I have been going back and forth. He's a very big proponent of the Mustangs. To me, I don't know. I just don't. That's just not a police car.
I guess.
Now, the Tahoe's a police car.
Sure.
Or that big boat that.
The Crown Vic.
The Crown Vic. That's a police car.
I don't think they make the Crown Vics
anymore.
anymore.
Let me ask you, what do you think about a motorcycle? What do you think about the police motorcycle?
That's a police vehicle.
Sure.
They weave in and out of traffic, and they do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
there's definitely a need for them. But I'm just saying, to me, the Mustang is just kind of sissy-like. So what's up with the Mustang? How does this fit into your plan?
Okay,
and is it working?
So it's working well. It's working really well. So if you can think, and that's one of the things where people kind of misconstrued the whole program. If you take your mind away from thinking of a patrol vehicle and think more of the motorcycle. And the Mustang and we refer to everything as kind of a platform that we work out of. And so the Mustang is more of a platform akin to the motorcycle. they're a traffic unit, and their only purpose is traffic enforcement. So some of
Dedicated. They're dedicated to just one task.
just doing traffic. And so one of the criticisms people would say, well, you can't transport a prisoner. Well, you can't transport one on a motorcycle either. Right. And so some of the limitations with motorcycles is we don't use them at night because of some of the safety issues. Mm-hmm. They take a very highly and specially trained officer. Can't rotate people on and off the motorcycles. The motorcycles are leased. It's kind of an expensive program, but they're very useful. They're peppy. They can get in behind a vehicle very quickly when they're doing traffic enforcement. So there's a lot of great benefits.
And they're harder to see.
But so one of their big benefits is the visual impact of that police motorcycle. When you see one, you know they are just doing traffic enforcement, and it creates a psychological impact that, hey, I better slow down. I better mind the traffic laws because here is a traffic enforcement vehicle. And so what we're doing with the Mustangs is the same thing. However, I can use them at night. I can rotate officers in and out of them. There's no special training to drive one of them, and they create that visual impact that, hey, that is just a traffic enforcement vehicle, and so we're kind of getting the best of both worlds. A platform that's not used for patrol work. They don't transport prisoners. They don't go to regular radio calls. They are purely just to do the same thing the motorcycles do, but at all hours of the day. With virtually any police officer can drive in them and do that job, and they're a great carrot and stick. Also, if you look at that mindset, we've got a lot of officers that want to drive them and that want to go. So it's a great kind of a reward benefit that if you're a hard worker and you want a little extra benefit, something that you want to go out and do that's a little bit differentiated from everyday police work, got a great program. But going back to that recruiting, retention. Expansion goals that we set, this is a great retention mode. It's an extra unit.
So is the purpose that it's small and peppy?
It is. It can get into traffic, in and out of traffic a lot quicker. Sitting on the shoulder of the road, running radar. The Tahoe is limited because it's a heavy vehicle. It can't jump out into traffic nearly as quickly as a motorcycle or one of those sports cars, and so such as the Mustang. And so,
and they're good in pursuit, I suppose.
Well, sort of, and so I'll offer that up that they hold the same pursuit policies as all of our officers. They're not a pursuit vehicle. They're not. We didn't buy them to do better in pursuits or anything like that. If a car runs from them, again, our pursuit policies are very clear. Officers are gonna look at that and weigh the need versus risk factors, the need to immediately capture a suspect versus the prevailing risk to the public or to themselves, as well as to the violator. And so, but yeah, they certainly can perform differently and perhaps better than one of the traditional patrol vehicles.
So price-wise, the Mustang versus, say, a Tahoe, is the Mustang quite a bit less expensive than the Tahoe?
It is, yeah, absolutely. So for a couple of reasons. One, it's just a cheaper vehicle. It costs less money on the front end. And then outfitting it, we don't put nearly the same kind of equipment. Just like on the motorcycle, it doesn't have a cage, it doesn't have the computer, it doesn't have a lot of that same equipment that a patrol officer needs. The traffic platform doesn't need all of that as well. It's minimally equipped, and so it comes in on the back end cheaper as well.
Yeah. Well, just curious, like the Tahoes that you guys buy, are those? Do they come from the factory like with police interceptor engines and painted a certain way?
So actually they're upfitted. They're a police package vehicle. They're a little bit more stout in the suspension. They've got a better alternator, things like that. But they come all black. And then, believe it or not, there's, I think, like 7 different black and white paint schemes. If you'll notice the state troopers' cars, it's a different black and white scheme than ours. Other cities, I think one's referred to as a zebra scheme. There's a skunk scheme. There's these different terms they use as to whether the hood's white or the top is white or which one. So it comes all black, and then they basically paint it according to what your city's or your department's paint scheme is.
So has the Tahoe been a good vehicle? I mean,
it's been a great vehicle, and
you're replacing those Crown Vics, or do they even make those anymore?
They quit making. So that was one of the big contentions in 2011. A lot of departments, us included, people kind of criticized, hey, why are you going to this big, heavy, vehicle? The fact is, this, lower gas mileage, they quit making the Crown Vic. You had to go to something, and Tahoe's kind of won the day.
Yeah. Well, It is 7:29 here on KFYO Mornings. Dave King, Matt Martin, doing our thing, talking to Chief Stevens from the Lubbock Police Department. So we'll take our 7:30 break and be back with more of the Chief in just a moment. News Talk, 95.1 FM and 790 AM. This is KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. And again, with Lubbock Police Chief Greg Stevens answering a lot of questions this morning. One thing we wanted to ask you about was high-speed chases. You know, I haven't heard a lot of them. There hadn't been a lot of them in the news lately, but it seemed back some time ago we were getting a high-speed chase every third day or so.
Yes,
it just seemed that way. Now, you know, I don't know the situation, but we've had a couple of people in the last couple of years or so that's been killed in high-speed chases, some civilians, and I don't know. I wonder about how safe they are.
Well, they're very dangerous is the thing, and I can tell you that I've been.
There are some cities where the police just won't chase.
So there's some cities that prohibit them outright altogether, which I don't agree with. I think is a bad policy because there are times where it is necessary to chase very bad bad people. They're dangerous, but there are instances where the need to capture a very dangerous criminal outweighs the prevailing risk, even to the general public. A person may pose such a substantial risk to the public that we've got to capture that individual right away. So I don't agree with an absolute no pursuit policy. However, you've got to have policies that are effective, that are concise, that are not overly complex. And I can tell you that in my nearly 30 years of law enforcement, certainly 25 years here with the city, we have more chases today, and I think nationwide, but for sure in my experience here in Lubbock, than we had when I was a young troop. We just didn't really have that many car chases as I came up as a patrolman and even as a patrol supervisor. And we have more and more now, which is concerning to me. And so we want to make sure that our policies are easy to follow, offer good guidance to the troops. But one thing that I've really made a push for is for our first line supervisors to very quickly get in and take charge and make good, effective decisions. And that's a lot easier said than done. They're in the rank of sergeant is a pivotal role throughout the organization in every aspect of law enforcement, certainly in a high-speed chase. But it has to be that individual to make those decisions, because the patrol officer that is in that car chase is somewhat emotionally involved. And we're police officers are very type A personality people, and they you want to capture this person. You don't want to stop this chase. Mm-hmm. And while officers make very good decisions, they'll call a chase off when it gets too dangerous. It's harder for them to do that than a sergeant who's detached from that, right, and not actually physically involved. And so our policy, as are most, are the foundation is needs versus risk. In other words, the need to immediately capture a suspect versus the prevailing risk to the public from the officer's actions, the risk to the officer as well as the risk to the suspect. And so that's the foundation of it. And then we have some prohibitions to pursuit, and so we don't publicize those, but they're well known, and the officers and the supervisors know, hey, if this is a factor, then you're prohibited from pursuing.
Well, another topic. Again, Matt and I watch the news on a daily basis, and there's one thing that I have noticed, and you've been in law enforcement for 30 years, and I'd like to hear your comments about this, but it just seems rarely that we laugh about it. Somebody robs a bank or somebody does something, and generally we'll find in the next day or two LPD or the sheriff has got them in custody.
And on a really good day, the K-9 unit was used.
Yeah, yeah.
I was a K-9 handler as a military policeman. I'm with you. I love it when K-9 get captured.
I'm telling you, I would just give a week's pay to be there to watch the dog work. We had a demonstration at our Ambucks Club one time. They're absolutely amazing animals.
Well, and the dogs are some of our happiest officers, especially when they get to capture a suspect.
When they get to bite somebody.
Their tails wag faster than most all.
And I have to confess, I did laugh out loud the other day when the canine was sent in, and
it was with the guy under the house.
The person was arrested,
crawl space,
but was taken to UMC to treatment of dog bites.
Well, and of course it's the dog is a use of force, and we're very
But
we're
that's
very
better.
prudent.
That's better than a bullet.
It absolutely is. We're very prudent with each type of force that we use, but but the canine offers an opportunity to use a minimal amount of force, and to rather than risk an officer's life. They're just a great tool.
No.
And we've got a great canine unit. The sergeant over that unit is one of our best officers. Been with the department a long time, and been in the canine unit a long time. And he's developed a program where we train our own dogs. We really have just got a great program.
But it just seems to me like that and I don't know if this is nationwide or if it speaks to the quality of LPD and our sheriff. We're just closing more cases. I mean, people just don't seem to be getting away with much.
Well, it's like these shootings.
They may have in the past.
I totally agree. It's like these shootings that we've had this month, especially the one over this last weekend. Immediately when this occurred and the homicide investigators put out some information that it was a stolen vehicle, it was a particular sergeant on shift, a patrol sergeant who knew, hey, here's where some vehicles are being stolen from, here's where they're being dumped, put that information out. Patrol officers quickly went over there, found the stolen vehicle, knew some of the kids that were involved in this, quickly developed names, and in just a matter of hours had that case wrapped up.
So technology has to play a big part in this.
It does, and technology is very important, but still the intuitive, old-fashioned law enforcement just wherewithal, I think really comes into play.
But it seems like that almost any crime that's committed, you have video of them. There's video cameras everywhere now.
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes a real difference.
Okay, 7:43 a.m. Quick break, and we'll be right back. News Talk, 95.1 FM and 790 a.m. This is KFYO Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin and Lubbock Police Chief Greg Stevens.
So one thing that's been, really big as far as city council and everything are the substations that are coming out. How involved are you in figuring out how the substations are going to be set up, where they're going to be set up, and how important is that to your police department?
It's incredibly important and very involved to answer both those questions. So it was my plan whenever I first took over. And what I'd inherited and had been working on actually as an assistant chief was basically just one facility, a new police station. But it was a very expensive project, and it was one kind of Taj Mahal, which I think would have worked. With our fleet car program, we were getting by, but we're long overdue to decentralize, to get out into the communities. And I'm an advocate of community-oriented policing. Now, that's sort of a buzzword across this industry, and you ask 9 people, you'll get 9 variations of what is community-oriented policing. But it's very simple. It's tailoring your police strategies and your responses to the different communities in which we work. Community policing is not complicated. It's not a program. It's a philosophy of how we're going to do business, and it's really nothing more than a partnership with the community. But Lubbock's not one community. It's many communities. There's newly annexed areas. There's well-established areas, and they all want a different level of interaction and a different type of partnership with us. We can't do that from one centralized Taj Mahal location that's quite expensive and sort of a fortress where people don't feel welcome, and it's not convenient. And not convenient for the public nor for the officers. So the plan that I proposed was a more modest headquarters downtown and substations, at least 2, and really we needed 3 substations out into the city. One of our other big issues, we've got to have a new property room or a new evidence storage facility. And so the plan that has evolved, working very closely with our new city manager, he's a proponent of it as well. And so the plan that we have now is a police headquarters building, roughly 47 to under 50,000 square feet. on land that the city owns already downtown, a new property room where the old animal control facility is on Municipal Hill. The city already owns that. We're already in the process of demolishing that to put the property room and a lab there, because those two entities work hand in hand. And then an east substation. The city owns a lot or owns land at East 19th and MLK, and that'll cover the east side of the city. And then a north substation and a south substation, and we're currently working towards finding locations for those. We've got some general areas, but looking at where we're going to put the north and the south substations. So what you'll have is rather than one big fortress of a police station, we'll have a network of police facilities. So greatest example is if you turn in, say, a wallet, you find a wallet, turn it into a police officer, rather than that officer having to come all the way downtown to turn that in, they can go right to their substation and turn it into a kind of an after-hours check-in for property. And better yet, if it's your wallet that you call up and we find out it's yours, you can go downtown today and pick it up, or if you don't wait till tomorrow, we'll have it back out at the substation that serves your part of the city.
So you'll just have
sure
cars that go by and
property
pick,
vans, yeah,
and there'll be holding cells at these substations.
Well, actually, there won't be,
won't
and
be.
that's one of the big things that are confusing. We'll still use the county's jail. There's been some talk that we'll put a holding facility in far southwest Lubbock County. The same issues that we face if you make an arrest at 98th in Milwaukee of going all the way out by the airport. The sheriff's office faces the same problems. So does Wolfforth PD, the state troopers, everyone does. So this won't solve that issue, but we're not going to get back into the jail business. The sheriff and I have a great relationship.
We got a wonderful jail out there, don't
we do. We
wonder
absolutely
maybe.
do. And so we're not going to build jails. We're not going to put holding facilities. There'll be interview rooms so that detectives can interview potential witnesses, victims, suspects, or whatever. But we're not going to build jail cells in them.
Okay. So one other are we looking at anything in like strip malls or something like that? Or are we looking
No, we're
at
building
actual
individual police stations.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll be
freestanding.
freestanding. A law enforcement facility is a special kind of building, and it has to be secure to protect the officers and the staff and to protect citizens that come into it. But it's also got to be welcoming. We've got to make it to where people feel, hey, this is a public building. It's your police station. And one of the biggest problems that we face right now is we're trying to serve a city of 250,000 people from one police station, and that's a daunting task. Yeah. We're going to move to a program of serving about 80,000 citizens out of each police station, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, Lubbock is just exploding in growth.
It's too big to try to serve from one place.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think that about wraps us up. We're so glad that you came out. I'm glad to get to meet you, and it's been a great almost an hour visit this morning. You've answered a whole lot of questions, and we look forward to having you back sometime.
I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to coming back.
All right. Thank you.
7:52 a.m. Here on KFYO Mornings. We'll take a break and be right back.